Have you ever wondered what America tasted like before? Fast food and factory meals took over. Long before drive-thrus and plastic packaging, native tribes across this land crafted dishes so powerful they sustained entire nations. Yet today, most of these flavors and the stories behind them are almost forgotten. In this video, we're rewinding time to rediscover 30 ancient Native American recipes that fed body, spirit, and community for centuries. Stay till the end, because the last one might just change how you think about food forever. If you love uncovering America's forgotten food history, hit like and subscribe. Let's keep these memories alive together. 1. Wojapi Lakota Berry Pudding. Imagine standing beside an open fire on the wide Dakota plains, the scent of smoke mixing with the sweetness of simmering berries. In the heart of Lakota life, this dish called wojapi was never just food. It was a symbol of patience, gratitude, and continuity passed down through generations of mothers and grandmothers. The word wojapi translates loosely to pudding, yet it carries a depth no English word can hold. Berries gathered from the land, choke cherries, blueberries, or strawberries were crushed and slowly cooked with water until they released their own natural sugars. The process could take hours, demanding quiet attention and respect for the ingredients. As the mixture thickened into a dark, glossy sauce, it became more than nourishment, it became memory. Families shared wojapi with fry bread or game meat during ceremonies that celebrated life, harvest, and unity. Each spoonful told a story of survival in harsh winters and joy in community gatherings. While today's desserts come in plastic containers, nothing compares to the warmth of this humble pudding made by hand, beside a fire under the open sky, a taste of heritage few Americans still remember. 2. Pemmican, the ancient power bar picture, a time before highways and grocery stores when survival depended on skill, not convenience. Among the Cree and Plains tribes, pemmican was the ultimate travel food, a concentrated form of strength that could keep hunters alive for weeks across the frozen wilderness. Its name comes from the Cree word pimikan, meaning manufactured grease, yet this humble word hides a miracle of ancient nutrition. Thin strips of buffalo, elk, or deer were dried slowly over smoky fires until brittle, then pounded into fine powder using stone tools. Melted fat, clear and golden, was mixed in along with dried berries that added sweetness and preserved vitamins. Once packed tightly into small cakes, pemmican could last for months, even years, without spoiling. Every bite held the energy of the plains, the sun that fed the grass, the buffalo that roamed freely, the hands that worked tirelessly to prepare it. In many ways, it was the ancestor of the modern energy bar, except this one was made of wisdom and survival, not sugar and wrappers. It fueled journeys, wars, and legends, and it still whispers of a time when food was both medicine and memory. 3. Tonka bars, the modern revival of tradition. Now imagine the same spirit of survival reborn in a modern form. Tonka bars are more than just snacks. They are a bridge between past and present, created by native entrepreneurs determined to honor their ancestors while building a sustainable future. The word tijanka in Lakota means great or large, a fitting name for something small in size but immense in meaning. These bars combine buffalo meat, cranberries, and a hint of natural seasoning, echoing the exact ingredients of ancient pemmican. But here, the story deepens. Each bar represents economic sovereignty produced on native-owned ranches and supporting tribal communities across the plains. When you unwrap a Tonka bar, you're not just tasting protein and fruit, you're tasting resilience, revival, and pride. In a world filled with artificial energy bars, this one stands apart, guided by ancestral science rather than corporate formula. The flavor is smoky, sweet, and clean, reminding us that nourishment once came from harmony with nature, not factories. It's proof that even in the 21st century, the heartbeat of the buffalo and the wisdom of the elders still finds a way to feed the people. 4. Three Sisters stew corned beans and squash. Close your eyes and picture a field bathed in the soft light of early autumn. Corn stalks rise tall and proud beans curl upward around them, and broad squash leaves stretch wide across the soil. To many Native American tribes, these were not just crops. They were the Three Sisters, sacred companions that sustained entire communities for over 1,000 years. Each plant carried purpose, corn offered structure, beans gave nourishment to the soil, and squash shielded the earth from thirst and heat. When cooked together into a thick, hearty stew, they formed a perfect balance of flavor and nutrition, complete protein, natural sweetness, and earthy comfort. It wasn't just dinner, It was a celebration of interdependence, a living lesson in how harmony keeps life thriving. Families gathered around clay pots simmering, with the three sisters adding wild herbs, venison, or onions according to what the land provided. Today, chefs may call it farm to table, but native farmers perfected that relationship centuries ago. Every bowl of this stew is a reminder that survival isn't competition, it's cooperation, just as the sisters once grew side by side in the heart of America. 5. Acorn bred patience from the forest. Imagine walking through an oak forest. In the crisp air of late autumn, the ground blanketed with acorns that crunch softly underfoot. To many Native American tribes, these nuts were not just a seasonal gift, they were survival itself. Yet turning the bitter acorn into sweet, nourishing bread required patience, skill, and respect for the rhythm of nature. Women would gather baskets of acorns, crack them open, and grind them into coarse meal with smooth river stones. The raw meal tasted unbearably bitter, full of tannins that had to be washed away through careful leaching, sometimes by burying the meal in running streams for days. Only when the water ran clear and the bitterness faded could the acorn be reborn as food. The dough, mixed simply with water, was pressed into flat cakes and baked on hot stones until golden brown, its aroma rich and earthy. That bread fed families through long winters when nothing else remained. It was slow food in the truest sense, born of time, care, and gratitude. Today, few remember it, yet its lesson endures. Real nourishment often takes time, and the sweetest things begin in bitterness. 6. Blue corn mush, the desert's morning comfort. At sunrise in the vast deserts of the Southwest, the air still cool and violet before the heat arrives. Families once gathered around small fires to cook blue corn mush. This simple dish, made from ground blue cornmeal, was the heart of Hopi and Navajo mornings, a sacred comfort linking body, spirit, and land. Grinding blue corn on volcanic stone medites was an act of devotion in itself. Each stroke released a soft, nutty aroma and turned the kernels into fine, lavender-colored meal. When stirred slowly into boiling water, the mixture thickened into a velvety porridge that shimmered in shades of indigo and silver beneath the rising sunday. A touch of wild honey or berries added sweetness, but never excess. For the desert people, blue corn was more than food, it was identity. Its deep color symbolized the sky and endurance, reminding each generation that even in harsh lands, beauty could grow. Today, supermarkets sell box cereals with cartoon mascots, yet none can match the quiet power of that morning bowl, warm, humble, and filled with the light of the desert dawn. If you're enjoying this journey through time, hit like and subscribe to keep these stories alive. 7. Wild rice and cranberry pilaf, the food that grows on water. Picture a silver lake at dawn, the mist rising gently as two people in a birch canoe move through tall green reeds. This is how the Ojibwe people have harvested Manuman wild rice for over 1,000 years. To them, it wasn't merely food, but a sacred gift, the good berry that fulfilled an ancient prophecy guiding their people to the land where food grows on water. Each grain was hand-gathered by bending the stalks over the canoe and striking them gently with wooden paddles, allowing ripe seeds to fall. The rice was then parched over open fires and winnowed by hand, releasing a smoky, nutty fragrance that carried across the lakeshore. When cooked slowly and mixed with dried cranberries and roasted nuts, it became a dish of perfect harmony, earthy, tart, and deeply satisfying. More than a meal, it told a story of gratitude for the lake, the harvest, and the community that shared it. Today, boxed wild rice blends try to imitate it, but none capture its soul. This was food gathered with prayer, cooked with patience, and eaten in silence by those who knew that nature, when respected, always gives back. 8. Buffalo roast with juniper berries, medicine from the plains. Across the open grasslands where the horizon never ends, the buffalo once moved like living thunder. For the plains tribes, the Lakota, the Cheyenne, the Crow, this mighty animal was everything: food, shelter, clothing, and spirit. Among their most cherished dishes was buffalo roast with juniper berries, a meal that was both sustenance and medicine. Hunters would choose the best cut from the buffalo's shoulder or hindquarter, then rub it with crushed juniper berries gathered from the prairie hills. These tiny pine-scented cones carried cleansing properties and a taste unlike anything else, sharp, wild, and alive. The meat was wrapped and cooked slowly in earthen pits lined with hot stones, where it roasted for hours until tender enough to fall apart. When the roast emerged, glistening and fragrant, it wasn't served in silence. It was shared. The juniper's aroma mingled with the smoky air as families gathered to give thanks to the land, to the herd, and to the strength that carried them through another winter. In each bite lay a balance of earth and sky, proof that food could heal the body and honor the spirit. 9. Bear fat fry bread, the taste of survival. Imagine a campfire flickering under a cold night sky, its light dancing on the faces of people who had lost nearly everything yet refused to give up. Out of that hardship came bear fat fry bread, a food born from resilience. Before government rations and commodity flour changed native diets forever, tribes rendered fat from bear, elk, or buffalo to create oil for cooking. That pure golden fat became the heart of this now famous bread. The dough was simple, just flour, salt, baking powder, and water mixed softly and stretched thin by hand. When dropped into hot bear fat, it puffed and bubbled into a crisp golden round light on the edges, soft at the center. It carried the nutty aroma of the wild and the warmth of shared survival. Fry bread is loved and debated today, a reminder of endurance but also of loss. Still, for many native families, it remains a taste of home, eaten with honey meat or wojapee. It tells a bittersweet truth that even in suffering, people can transform scarcity into memory and memory into strength. What about you? Have you ever tasted a dish that carried both pain and pride in the same bite? 10. Hominy stew, the wisdom in the grain. Long before chemistry had a name, Native Americans discovered something extraordinary. By soaking dried corn in a mixture of ash and water, they unlocked its hidden nutrients, creating hominy, a food that would sustain generations and prevent disease. This process, called nixtamalization, turned simple corn into something powerful, softer, sweeter, and rich with life. Once the kernels were hulled and washed, they simmered slowly in clay pots with venison, rabbit, or wild vegetables like onions and sunflower seeds. The aroma drifted through the village, earthy and comforting. Each bowl of hominy stew carried the warmth of community and the intelligence of the ancestors who first understood how to turn grain into medicine. It was survival science disguised as supper. Every spoonful fed both the body and the mind, proving that true nourishment isn't measured by calories but by connection to the land, the fire, and the people around it. Today, while canned soups line store shelves, the humble hominy stew reminds us that wisdom often begins with patience and a handful of corn. If you're enjoying this journey through America's forgotten kitchens, hit like and subscribe to keep these stories alive for future generations. 11. Nettle soup springs first medicine. After the long, harsh winters on the plains and in the forests, the first sign of spring wasn't flowers, it was nettles. Sharp, stinging, and easily overlooked, they pushed through the thawing ground when little else dared to grow. To Native American tribes, these wild greens were a miracle of renewal. They called them spring medicine, a gift from the earth to awaken tired bodies and clear the spirit. Gathering nettles required care and courage. Women used deer-hide gloves to avoid the sting as they harvested the young shoots rich in iron, calcium, and vitamins. Once boiled, the bite vanished, leaving a deep green broth that smelled of rain and soil. Some families added onions, wild turnips, or a few pieces of meat, while others kept it pure, just the plant and the fire. Nettle soup wasn't fancy, but it was powerful. It marked the moment between hunger and hope, between surviving and living again. In a world that now buys detox, cleanses in bottles, the ancestors already knew how to heal with nothing but patience, water, and the first green life of spring. 12. Cedar tea, the forest breath. In the stillness of winter, when snow covered the earth and fruit was long gone, the people turned to the evergreens. From their needles came warmth, healing, and strength. Cedar tea made from the tender branches of pine hemlock or juniper was more than a drink, it was a prayer steeped in steam. Women gathered the green needles with reverence, knowing which trees to choose and which to leave untouched. They crushed them gently, releasing a fragrance so fresh it seemed to clear both the air and the mind. When steeped in boiling water, the tea turned a soft golden green and filled the lodge with the scent of life itself. Rich in vitamin C and natural oils, it warded off scurvy and soothed winter coughs long before modern medicine knew how. Each sip carried the spirit of the forest, a reminder that even in the coldest months, the earth still gives. The elders said the trees shared their breath with us through this tea so that we might remember healing isn't always found in bottles or pills, but in the quiet wisdom of the land. Shursan? Sumac lemonade, the wild taste of summer. On long summer days when the sun blazed over the hills and the rivers ran low, the people of the woodlands found refreshment in a most unexpected place. The scarlet clusters of sumac. To the untrained eye, those fuzzy red berries looked dangerous. But native families knew their secret. When soaked in cool water, they released a bright, tart flavor like natural lemonade. Children would help gather the ripe clusters, their hands stained red as they carried them home in woven baskets. The berries were crushed and swirled in cold water, then strained through cedar bark or cloth until the liquid turned a beautiful rose pink. Served in carved wooden cups, sumac lemonade was tangy, clean, and alive with the taste of the season. It was the drink of celebrations, cooling bodies after a hunt, brightening spirits during ceremonies, and connecting people through shared joy. Long before soda fountains and factory sugar, this was nature's energy drink, simple, pure, and full of sunlight. Today, few would recognize the sumac bush as anything but a wild shrub, yet for centuries, it was the flavor of summer itself. 14. Prickly pear cactus jam sweetness from the thorns. Beneath the burning sun of the desert southwest, the prickly pear cactus stood in silence, its pads bristling with tiny spines, its fruit glowing like jewels. To the Tohono O'odham and other desert tribes, these bright red fruits called tunas were not a danger, but a blessing. They turned the harsh landscape into a pantry of sweetness. Harvesting the fruit took patience and courage. Using long wooden tongs, gatherers twisted the tunas from the cactus pads and rolled them in sand or brushed them over flame to remove the thorns. Inside waited a soft ruby-colored flesh bursting with juice. Crushed and cooked slowly over low heat, the fruit transformed into prickly pear jam, thick, fragrant, and glowing like desert sunset in a jar. Its flavor was both sweet and floral, a taste of the desert after rain. Stored through the cold months, it became a precious reminder of warmer days. Every spoonful told a story of ingenuity, of finding beauty where others see hardship. In a land of thorns, the people learned long ago that even the toughest earth can give rise to something tender and sweet. 15. Cholla buds with agave syrup, desert's hidden feast. In the endless expanse of the Sonoran Desert, survival depended on knowing the land's quiet secrets. One of those secrets lay on the arms of the cholla cactus' tiny buds, covered in fierce spines. To the Tohono O'odham people, these buds were not obstacles, but gifts. When harvested before the flowers bloomed, they became one of the desert's richest sources of protein and minerals. Collectors used long wooden tongs to knock the buds loose, then rolled them in hot sand or held them briefly over flame to burn away the spines. After cleaning, the buds were roasted in earth ovens lined with heated stones until tender and golden. When served with thick amber agave syrup made by roasting the hearts of century plants for days, they formed a dessert as ancient as the desert itself. The flavor was deep and unexpected, smoky, sweet, and earthy all at once. It was proof that the harshest landscapes often produce the most refined delicacies. Each bite carried a message older than memory, gratitude for endurance, and faith that even in a land of thorns, life will always find a way to bloom. 16. Pine nut soup comfort of the high desert. High in the pine-covered mesas of the Great Basin, the air smells of resin and wood smoke. Here among the towering pinyon trees, the Paiute and Shoshone peoples gathered one of their most treasured foods, the small buttery pine nut. Every few years, when the cones ripened, families camped beneath the trees for days, singing and working together as they collected the harvest that would feed them through the winter. The nuts were roasted over open fires until the cones cracked and released their golden seeds. Some were stored for later, but the freshest were ground into meal for pine nut soup, a warm, creamy dish that nourished both body and spirit. Mixed with water or broth and cooked slowly, the soup thickened into a velvety texture with a gentle, nutty aroma. Served during cold nights, it was more than food. It was comfort shared in silence, the taste of family and firelight. Long before modern nutritionists praised healthy fats and plant protein, the ancestors already knew these humble nuts held the power to sustain life with grace and gratitude. Your comments keep these memories alive. Share your favorite comfort food below. 17. Acorn soup, the patience of the forest. Deep in the oak groves of California, the Miwok and Yokuts people turned one of nature's simplest gifts, the acorn, into a meal of quiet power. While others saw bitterness, they saw possibility. With care and patience, they transformed the forest's hardest nut into a smooth, nourishing acorn soup that carried families through the coldest months. Women cracked the shells with river stones, ground the kernels into fine meal, and spent hours leaching away the bitterness with running water. Only when the taste turned soft and mild did the cooking begin. The acorn meal was stirred slowly into boiling water, thickening into a golden velvety soup that filled the air with a nutty, woodsy aroma. Served with wild greens or bits of roasted meat, it offered warmth that reached deeper than the body. It soothed the soul. The elders said this dish taught two lessons, patience and gratitude. Today, instant soups promise speed and flavor, but none can match the calm wisdom in a bowl of acorn soup simmered by hand beneath the whispering oaks that once fed a people for centuries. 18. Three sisters bred harmony in every grain. In villages that dotted the eastern woodlands, the sacred trio of corn, beans, and squash, the three sisters nourished not only the body but also the spirit of the people. From those same ingredients came Three Sisters bread, a humble loaf that told the story of balance and cooperation in every bite. The corn was ground into meal, the beans mashed into a soft paste, and the squash roasted until sweet and golden. Mixed together with water and baked on flat stones, the dough rose with the gentle scent of earth and smoke. Each ingredient carried its role. Corn gave strength, beans brought richness, and squash offered sweetness, three distinct lives intertwined into one. When shared around a communal fire, the bread reminded everyone of what the ancestors had long known: nothing thrives alone. The land, like the people, survives through harmony. In a world now filled with isolated meals eaten on the go, this bread still whispers the old truth that unity, not speed, is what truly sustains us. It was food as philosophy, warm from the fire and filled with the wisdom of the soil. 19. Prairie turnips, roots of resilience. Across the vast grasslands where buffalo once thundered, a small, unassuming plant quietly sustained generations. The prairie turnip, or timsala in Lakota. Hidden beneath the soil, its pale roots were packed with nutrients and a faint sweetness that made survival possible when game was scarce. For Plains women, digging these turnips in the summer heat was both work and tradition, carried out with songs that honored the earth's generosity. The roots were peeled, sliced thin, and dried on racks in the sun until they turned leathery and golden. Stored in rawhide sacks, they lasted all winter, ready to be rehydrated in soups and stews. Their flavor, delicate yet earthy, told of prairie winds and endless horizons. In hard times, a handful of prairie turnips could feed a family, a symbol of quiet endurance when the world seemed unforgiving. Modern diets celebrate superfoods, but these women already knew the secret. Centuries ago, the greatest strength often lies underground, waiting patiently for those who remember where to look. The prairie silent now still carries that lesson in its roots. Resilience born from simplicity and gratitude from every harvest. 20. Bison jerky, strength for the journey. On the open plains where winter winds could strip the warmth from a man's bones, the tribes of the Great Plains mastered a way to carry survival with them. Bison jerky. It was food made not for comfort but for endurance, built to last through long hunts, migrations, and battles. Yet within its smoky flavor lay a story of discipline, respect, and balance with the natural world. Hunters first offered thanks to the spirit of the buffalo before cutting thin strips of meat from its flanks. The pieces were hung high above slow fires, kissed by smoke until they dried to dark ribbons of strength. Sometimes mixed with berries or fat to form traveling cakes, this preserved meat could last for months without spoiling. When hunger struck, a single strip was enough to revive a weary hunter or traveler. It was nourishment in its purest form, protein and purpose bound together by fire and air. Long before plastic wrappers and protein bars, the people of the plains carried their energy in something far simpler. The gift of the buffalo, prepared with care, consumed with gratitude, and remembered with every journey across the endless prairie. 21. Corn husk tamales wrapped in tradition. Long before Spanish words like tamale reached the Americas, southwestern tribes were already crafting these bundles of sustenance and ceremony. Using only what the earth offered, they wrapped life itself inside layers of corn and steam. The husks, softened over fire, became both vessel and gift, holding a dough of ground corn called masa, mixed with beans, herbs, or bits of wild game. The corn, first soaked in ash water to remove its husk, gained new life through nixtamalization, a process the ancestors discovered that unlocked nutrients and made the grain sweeter, stronger, and sacred. Filled and tied with care, the tamales were steamed for hours in clay pots or earth ovens until the air filled with their warm, earthy scent. When unwrapped, the masa gleamed golden and firm, tasting of sunlight and smoke. Families shared them during harvest feasts and journeys, each tamale a reminder of how simple gifts could become extraordinary through patience. Today's foil-wrapped fast food tries to imitate that warmth, but nothing compares to the humble elegance of corn, ash, and thyme, three ingredients that fed nations and carried memory through centuries. 22. Wild game stew, heart of the hunt. When the first frost swept across the plains and the nights grew, long families gathered around fires that burned steady through the dark. In the pot, hung above the flames, simmered wild game stew, a meal that turned the hardship of the hunt into warmth, nourishment, and story. Venison rabbit, or sometimes wild turkey, formed its heart. Each piece browned slowly before being joined by corn, beans, and wild onions gathered from the fields. The scent of smoke and meat filled the air, mingling with laughter, prayers, and the soft rhythm of the drum outside the lodge. Every spoonful carried the energy of the land, the grass that fed the deer, the rain that fed the corn, the hands that worked in unity. There were no recipes written down, only instincts passed through. Generations add what the season allows, cook until the meat yields to the fire, and never forget to share. This was food as storytelling, each meal a chapter of gratitude. Modern kitchens can recreate the ingredients, but not the spirit, because the real flavor of this stew comes from something no spice can replace: belonging. 23. Wojapi with fry bread, a celebration of sharing. At tribal gatherings across the Great Plains, one dish always drew people together: warm fry bread torn by hand and dipped into thick ruby-colored wojapi. Though each could stand alone, together they became a symbol of unity, blending history, hardship, and hope into one unforgettable flavor. The wojapi, made from berries, simmered until they thickened into a glossy sauce, carried the memory of ancient ceremonies and summer harvests. The fry bread born from survival during forced relocations told another story of resilience when ingredients were scarce and choices few. When the two met on the same plate, sweet met savory, the old met the new, and pain transformed into pride. Families passed baskets of fry bread around the fire, children laughing as berry sauce stained their fingers. It wasn't just a meal, it was healing shared in every bite. In a world obsessed with perfection, this pairing reminds us that beauty often comes from imperfection. Simple dough, wild fruit, and a history, both bitter and sweet, bound together by love and survival. 24. Corn porridge, the mother of breakfast. Long before oats ever reached the American table, a gentler comfort was already warming morning fires. Corn porridge. Among the woodland and southeastern tribes, it was the first meal of the day, a slow-simmered reminder that nourishment comes not from luxury, but from care. Ground from dried kernels using heavy stone mortars, the cornmeal was stirred patiently into boiling water until it thickened into a golden, creamy texture. Sometimes honeyberries or bits of squash were added, though the pure version, just corn and water, was enough to sustain both children and elders. Its soft sweetness and faint scent of smoke carried the warmth of the hearth, the quiet rhythm of spoons against clay bowls, and the hum of dawn songs sung outside the lodges. To the people, corn wasn't merely a crop, it was life itself, the first gift of the earth. Each bowl of porridge was both meal and offering, eaten slowly with reverence. In modern times, we rush through instant breakfasts, but this ancient dish whispers a different truth. When food is made with patience and gratitude, even a humble grain becomes sacred. 25. Maple sugar candy, the sweet gift of winter. In the snow-covered forests of the Northeast, when the world lay quiet and cold, the people of the Great Lakes tribes found sweetness dripping from the trees themselves. Maple sugar candy was more than a treat. It was a revelation, proof that even in the stillness of winter, life continued to flow. When the first warm days softened, the Frost families tapped the trunks of maple trees with hollow reeds, collecting the clear sap in wooden buckets. The sap was then boiled for hours over open fires, the air thick with the scent of wood smoke and caramel. Slowly, the liquid darkened and thickened, transforming into golden sugar that could be poured into carved molds or dripped onto snow to harden into candy. Children gathered around to watch the syrup turn solid, their laughter mingling with the hiss of steam. It wasn't luxury, it was celebration. Each piece captured sunlight and patience, a reminder that sweetness often follows struggle. Centuries later, we still taste that miracle. Every spring, though few remember its origin, the humble hands that first learned to turn trees into sugar and winter into joy. 26. Salmon with cedar plank, the fire of the Northwest. Along the misty rivers and rocky shores of the Pacific Northwest, the people of the coastal tribes honored the salmon as both spirit and sustenance. Each year, when the silverfish returned upstream, it marked renewal, the promise that life would continue. From this sacred migration came one of the most revered dishes, salmon with cedar plank. Freshly caught salmon was cleaned, rubbed with salt and herbs, and then pinned to soaked cedar boards set upright beside open fires. The wood hissed softly as its fragrant oils seeped into the fish, infusing it with the scent of forest and smoke. The cooking took time, but that was the point. This was not fast food, it was ceremony. When the salmon was finally served, its flesh glowed deep orange and flaked apart with a touch. Families gathered to share it, giving thanks to the river that gave life. The cedar's aroma lingered long after the meal, a reminder that food was once a conversation with nature, not a conquest of it, a sacred exchange between earth, fire, and gratitude. 27. Clam chowder, the meeting of two worlds. On the cold New England coast, where the tides carried both danger and abundance, clam chowder was born from the meeting of two peoples. Long before colonial ships dropped anchor, the Wampanoag and other coastal tribes already gathered clams, simmering them with corn herbs and wild onions in clay pots by the shore. Later, European settlers brought milk, butter, and salt pork, transforming the humble stew into a symbol of early America's shared table. But the spirit of the dish remained the same: warmth and hardship, community in every bowl. The first chowders were thickened not with flour, but with crushed hardtack or cornmeal, giving them a hearty texture and a smoky flavor drawn from the sea. Eaten beside the fire as waves crashed nearby, it comforted fishermen, farmers, and families alike. Over time, the recipe spread and changed, but its heart endured. Each spoonful still carries the echo of that first cooperation, the land meeting the sea, the old world blending with the new. In its steam rises the true flavor of early America, simple, sustaining, and shared. 28. Cornbread with wild honey, sweetness of the hearth. In the wooden cabins and earthen lodges that dotted the frontier, few smells brought more comfort than that of cornbread baking over the fire. Born from native knowledge and adopted by settlers, this golden bread bridged two worlds, native cornmeal and European iron skillets becoming one of America's most enduring tastes. The cornmeal was mixed with a touch of salt and water, sometimes enriched with buttermilk or animal fat if the season was kind. Poured into hot cast iron and baked until its crust turned bronze, it emerged crisp at the edges and soft within. But the true magic came with the final touch. Wild honey drizzled over the top, its floral sweetness seeping into the warm crumb. Families shared it at every meal, morning, noon, and night, a humble yet sacred food that bound generations. In its simplicity lay a quiet lesson. The best things in life are often born from cooperation, not invention. Today's cornbread recipes may be sweeter or fancier, but none carry the same warmth as the one eaten beside a crackling hearth, where sweetness came not from sugar but from gratitude. 29. Bison bone broth, the strength of the earth. Long before health gurus praised bone broth as a miracle tonic, the Plains tribes had already mastered its power. Bison bone broth was a sacred food of endurance, born from respect for the animal that gave everything. Nothing from the buffalo went to waste. Its hide became shelter, its sinew became tools, and its bones became medicine simmered in fire and patience. Large leg and knuckle bones were split open to reveal their rich marrow, then placed in hide-lined pits filled with water and heated stones. The mixture simmered for days, the steam rising like prayer smoke. Over time, the broth turned golden and thick, carrying within it the essence of life, minerals, collagen, and warmth that could sustain even the weakest through the harshest winter. When poured into wooden bowls, it gleamed like sunlight caught in liquid form. Each sip restored strength and spirit, a reminder that nourishment begins with gratitude, not abundance. Today's packaged broths echo its idea, but never its soul. This was not a trend, it was wisdom brewed slowly on the open plains in harmony with the rhythm of the earth. 30. Cattail pollen cakes, golden gifts of the marsh. In the quiet wetlands where frogs sang and dragonflies skimmed the surface, the cattail stood tall, humble, yet generous. To the tribes who lived near the lakes and rivers, every part of this plant was useful, but in early summer it offered something rare and magical: pollen. Bright yellow, soft as dust, and rich with protein, it was gathered with care to make cattail pollen cakes the golden food of celebration. Collectors would bend the cattail heads over baskets, shaking them gently until clouds of golden powder drifted down like sunlight. The pollen was mixed with cornmeal or crushed seeds, bound with water or a touch of fat, then shaped into small cakes and cooked on hot stones. As they browned, they released a faint floral aroma, sweet, nutty, and unlike anything else in nature. Eaten during gatherings and rituals, these cakes symbolized abundance and the cycle of renewal. They were proof that even the smallest gifts of the land, noticed and respected, could sustain a people. Today, few remember the taste, yet its color remains eternal, the golden hue of gratitude glowing in every season of life. We've journeyed across the plains, deserts, forests, and rivers, tasting the spirit of a nation long before supermarkets and modern convenience existed. Each of these Native American dishes wasn't just a recipe, it was a story of endurance and gratitude and deep connection to the earth. They remind us that food once carried memory, medicine, and meaning far beyond flavor or fashion. From the humble wojapi shared at family gatherings to the powerful bison bone broth that kept people alive through winter, every dish told the same truth. Nothing was wasted and everything was sacred. In a world that moves too fast, these recipes whisper an older rhythm, one of patience, community, and respect for the land that feeds us all. If even one of these forgotten foods stirred something in you, don't let it fade again. Share this video, leave a comment with your favorite memory, and hit like and subscribe so that these stories and the people who first lived them will never be forgotten. Because remembering them isn't nostalgia, it's keeping America's original heartbeat alive.